All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking one of the absolute most dramatic collisions in all of human history. We're talking about that incredible moment when an absolutely unstoppable military force slammed headfirst into an unmovable cultural bedrock. We're going to look at the terrifying intersection of the Mongol Empire and the Islamic world, and, more importantly, the totally unbelievable aftermath of that clash. So think about this for a second, because it's the ultimate historical paradox we're trying to solve today. Usually, right, when a conquering army rolls through town, they impose their own language, their own religion, and their own way of life on the people they defeat. That's just how empires work. But here, the exact opposite happened. How on earth did a military force that literally wiped entire civilizations off the map end up voluntarily surrendering their own cultural identity to the very people they conquered? Well, to understand that, we have to look at what was actually at stake. Part 1. The Islamic Golden Age. Before the clash even happens, we need to set the scene. Imagine the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad. This was an era of just unrivaled wealth and intellect. The Abbasids had built the House of Wisdom, which was the largest library on earth at the time. They were actively funding scientists, and it was right here that a brilliant thinker named Al-Khwarizmi actually introduced algebra to the world. So you have intellectuals, poets, and translators flocking to Baghdad from every corner of the globe. It was an undisputed, totally unrivaled cultural superpower. But thousands of miles away, a very different kind of superpower was waking up. Part 2. The Rise of Genghis Khan. Meanwhile, far, far away from the beautiful blue domes of Baghdad, out on the unforgiving steppes of Mongolia, a young man named Temujin was uniting warring nomadic tribes. He would soon become known to the world as Genghis Khan. And look, his success wasn't just mindless savagery. It was built on a terrifying level of discipline. He completely restructured the military into exact decimal units. We're talking groups of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. And the loyalty systems were horrifyingly strict. If just one soldier fled from a 10-man squad in battle, the other 9 guys were beheaded by their own army. And the justice system was just as extreme. If you steal a horse, you owe 10. If you can't pay that back, you and your entire family face execution. This created a war machine that was perfectly unified and, frankly, impossible to defeat. Part 3. The Spark of War. Now here is the crazy part. With this massive, disciplined army at his back, Genghis Khan didn't originally plan to conquer the Islamic world. He actually just wanted to establish open trade routes. But then, we get what is arguably the single worst diplomatic failure in recorded history. Genghis Khan sent a peaceful trade delegation and an ambassador to the neighboring Islamic Khwarezmian Empire. And how did the Shah respond? He arrested the delegation and literally beheaded the Mongol ambassador. In pretty much every culture, you don't shoot the messenger. But for Genghis Khan, this was an unforgivable crime against honor. This one terrible decision completely pivoted the wrath of the entire Mongol military machine directly toward the Islamic world. And the retaliation, well, apocalyptic is really the only word for it. Genghis Khan marched his forces westward, and historical records show that the population of the Khwarezmian Empire plummeted from 2 million down to just 200,000. Let that sink in. That is 1.8 million lives extinguished. Genghis Khan systematically dismantled the entire region, actually leaving behind towering pyramids of human skulls as a brutal warning to the rest of the world. And to really cement the sheer terror of this invasion, there's this chilling historical moment. After completely conquering the territory, Genghis Khan gathered the survivors in a local mosque, climbed up onto the pulpit, and delivered this line: "I am the punishment of God sent upon you." It was a devastating psychological blow. It made the Mongols seem less like an army of men and more like an unstoppable supernatural catastrophe. Let's quickly trace how this nightmare unfolded chronologically. So in 1220, as we just saw, the Khwarezm Empire is completely destroyed. Now, Genghis Khan actually dies in 1227, but the momentum absolutely does not stop. His descendants just keep pushing further west. By 1258, Genghis Khan's grandson, Hulagu Khan, reaches the gates of Baghdad. Remember that incredible center of the Golden Age we talked about? It falls, officially ending the 500-year Abbasid Caliphate. It wasn't until 1260 that this terrifying wave of expansion was finally halted. The historical sources paint a truly heartbreaking picture of Baghdad's fall. The human toll was so staggering that it was said the Euphrates River ran red with blood. But the cultural devastation was just as profound. Hulagu's army essentially gutted the House of Wisdom and dumped its entire contents right into the river. So many thousands of books were destroyed that the water supposedly turned black with ink. In one fell swoop, the Golden Age was completely shattered. Part 4. Halted at Ain Jalut. At this point, it looked like the Mongol Empire was poised to conquer the holiest sites in Islam next. Nothing was stopping them. But instead of fleeing, the Egyptian Mamluk Sultanate decided to march out and fight back. And against all possible odds, they pulled off a miracle. The battle happened at Ain Jalut in Palestine, which, amazingly, historical traditions say is the exact same location where David fought Goliath. And in a total David and Goliath moment, the Mamluks decisively defeated the Mongol forces. This victory permanently shattered the myth the Mongols were invincible, and it finally set the physical, westward boundaries of their empire. Part 5. The Conquerors Conquered. Now, surviving the military onslaught is really only half the story. If we zoom in on the territories the Mongols actually kept and settled in, the narrative takes a totally wild turn. Over the generations, the surviving Mongol state went through a radical transformation. Think about it. These invaders started out living in nomadic yurts on the steppes. But within a few generations, they were the ones funding and building grand blue-domed Persian mosques. They traded their brutal military administration for the incredibly intricate Persian state bureaucracy, even adopting the Farsi language. Their names shifted from traditional nomadic ones like Ugadeh and Hulagu to Islamic names like Muhammad and Babur. And perhaps the biggest shock of all, they completely abandoned their traditional beliefs and voluntarily converted to Islam. The sources often refer to this as a fascinating historical digestion. Essentially, over the course of about 300 years, the deeply rooted cultural code of the region totally reprogrammed the invaders. The East digested the nomads. The Mongols might have won all the major battles, and sure, they held all the top political seats, but culturally, they were completely consumed by their subjects. They morphed from fearsome, unstoppable warlords into massive patrons of a Persian Renaissance. Which brings us to the end of today's explainer, but I want to leave you with a lingering question to chew on. If the absolute greatest, most unstoppable military machine the world had ever seen was ultimately consumed and totally rewritten by the exact same culture it tried to burn to the ground, what truly makes an empire immortal? Is it the strength with the sword or the resilience of the idea? Thank you so much for exploring this with us today, and keep questioning the history you think you know.